You're watching the KGP Pre-Game Show, live from the KGP Studios in downtown Cambridge, Ohio. Your source for the latest local sports highlights, interviews, and information. Brought to you by Buffalo Wild Wings, Surgent Construction, Valentine Insurance Agency, and Caleb Graham Productions. And now, let's go live to the guys in the studio.
Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of the Buffalo Wild Wings KGP Pre-Game Show, where we are going to look ahead to Week 8 of the high school football season, as well as look back at Week 7, as we're coming to you live from the beautiful studios of Caleb Graham Productions. I'm merely Tom Strasser, and once again, my partners in crime, my sidekicks, but most of all, they're my teammates, the one and only Heath Dawson and D-Train Darren McCullough. Kirby Graham once again on assignment for us. And fans, do not adjust anything on your screen. I can answer the question, it's yes. He really is this good looking, even in person. We are honored once again to be joined by the 5-2 head coach of the Buckeye Trail Warriors, Donnie Kerns. And Coach, a big win last week at Malvern, not an easy place to play. But before we hit you with some questions, I want to let you know, my partners, they're going to come high and inside with some high heaters. I'm going to throw you a couple of batting practice questions to ease you in. Number one, it's homecoming week. And so far with practice, and there's a lot of stuff going on out there, the team is on the roll. Any concern about the team being focused with TCC coming in Friday night?
I don't think so. We talked about that at Monday's practice. Hey, you know, we have to stay focused. Don't get caught up in all the homecoming events, because at the bottom line is, at the end of the day, you know, there's all kinds of activities, but all is 90% of them care about is if the football team wins. So you have to go out there and perform. You know, you can get involved in all those activities, you know, and you know, if you get hurt or something like that, you know, they don't care about that. They care about, is the football team going to win? So we got to stay healthy, you know, this week, and not get involved in that stuff, and get focused for a football game and a football game only. And then on Friday and Saturday after the game, they can celebrate homecoming all they want.
And Coach, another thing, it's Week 8, and as we mentioned, you're 5-2, playing your best football of the year. The last few weeks, we've been talking the P word a lot, playoffs. Now, I know you're one of the coaches that just goes week to week, one game at a time. But as far as the football team and the coaching staff, have you started talking playoffs or the possibilities?
You said this was all batting practice questions. No, we have not.
Here, let's wait the sweat off his face. Yeah. Got his sweat. He's good now.
No, we haven't. And I'll tell you what, I've called the coaches out. I think 2 of them this week, is if they talk about anybody but TCC. Yeah, no, it's absolutely not a topic of discussion.
I tell you what, Coach, if that was a tough one, you better be ready to duck and hit the floor with these questions coming up.
I used to hit high and inside out of the park. I did.
I witnessed it, actually.
Okay.
That's my sweet spot.
I'll turn it over to our favorite Mr. High and Inside.
You know, I want to go back to last week. You know, 38-21 win at Malvern. You know, what I really took away from the game, you guys trailed twice early, and both times you come back and responded. I want to talk a little bit about how you guys were able to be resilient after getting down twice early and was able to respond. You know, talk a little bit about that, Coach.
Yeah, you're right. Malvern hit that, I think, about the 3rd or 4th play of the game for a long touchdown, and I thought, oh boy, you know, we can't have this happen, you know. So offensively went down there and scored, and I think, you know, a couple plays later when they got the ball back, scored again. And you know, Coach Hartmeyer made a really good defensive adjustment, and you know, we kind of, you know, we were able to stop what they were doing. But give our kids credit for battling back. Even though it was early. Anytime you get down in the football game, it's easy to, not necessarily pack it in, but it's
right.
get some negative feelings and whatnot. So our kids battled.
And then you look, there it's 24-21 after Malvern scored at the 4:29 mark in the third, and you're getting ready to go in the fourth quarter. Did any kind of flashbacks to Barnesville go through your mind because you were in that same position, but yet there you go, big 14-0 edge in the fourth. Franco Rome, a huge touchdown, 16-yard touchdown run for a little bit of breathing room. But talk about that big fourth quarter.
I'll be honest with you. There was a time. It started early in the third, but by the fourth quarter, I'm not going to say I was, I knew we were going to win, but I started to be really confident. I could just see us slowly controlling the line of scrimmage on both sides, and so the fourth quarter, by that time I felt like January through July had paid off, and I was pretty confident that we were going to take over the fourth quarter.
And not to hog all the questions here, Train, but one more thing on top of that is it seems like that we should just take that trail hat off and put a chef hat on and an apron on you, because it seems like you have cooked up that same recipe many times this year. So it seems like it's kind of almost a been there, done that for you guys. Is that kind of how it's starting to feel a little bit for you guys?
Yeah, I'll tell you. And what's really, I think, made us go better the last couple of weeks is Jack really taking off offensively, and we are able to use him more in the first half, and get things going with Jack, and then Isaac's are kind of like our, he's the steady guy who's going to be consistent no matter what, and we just want to keep the ball in his hands in the in the second half, and the thing is the kids made that call at halftime. Mm-hmm. They said spread them out and run the football, and it was across the board. Our kids made that call, and it was our linemen and all of our skill guys. They knew it was there.
Okay, and D-Train, throw him a knuckle curve.
My turn to speak now.
I don't hit curveballs well. I never did.
Okay.
Never did.
And Hickman had 31 carries for 145 yards and 3 touchdowns. And like Coach Kerns was talking about, what you said, he only had maybe 5 carries in the first half.
Didn't have very many.
So I want to talk about your inner Kenny Rogers Friday night. You were a bit of the gambler, converting 3 of 5 fourth downs. So just talk about how important that was to kind of keep that momentum for you guys.
You talking about the 2 we didn't convert? Because they're the ones that bugged me. But yeah.
Hey, back to baseball. If you're 3 for 5, you're batting 6.
All right, yeah. I'll tell you that's one thing, that I'll tell you, past 3 years I'd have punted the football. I've got a little bit of, I used to be Trestle mode, and I guess I got a little bit of Urban Meyer in me, but they're big. I guess a lot of it comes down to, do you trust your offensive line to get a push? Mm-hmm. And if you do, I think you got to trust your kids to get a yard or two. And when they come over and they say they want to go for it, it's hard to not go for it, because I believe in those guys. I love those guys, and what they tell me, I'm going to do it.
And Coach, I like the confidence you said you had, going into that game. Is to anyone who's watched Buckeye Trail and Malvern the past couple of years, y'all have had some crazy, entertaining, wacky games. Now you get down there against an explosive offense. One of your best defenders, Ronnie Rominger, tries to play on a bum ankle but can't give it a go. Talk about the adjustments you and your team had to make on the fly, and a couple of guys who really maybe had to play where they're not supposed to and excel at as well.
Offensively, I'll start with offensively. We made that adjustment in the field house and on the bus ride up. We found out, right before game time, that Ronnie was probably not going to go, and that was tough. But we drew up all the formations, because Shane's our next guy to go in. Shane Smith, sophomore, he's going to be good, really good. He's our next guy to go in, but he gets the majority of his reps at fullback at the 3, and he doesn't get a lot of 4 reps, and we put him at the 4. And I drew up every formation that I thought we were going to run and where he would be, and just let him look at that sheet of paper on the bus ride up. And he never messed a play up all night, and that's a big position for us. Defensively, Coach Hartmeyer and I were still making that adjustment at about 6:30 on the field, and we were putting kids here, here, and finally at the end of the day we said, let's just put this kid, and we put Austin Payton. I said, put this kid here. That way we're not switching 3 or 4 guys. And Coach Hartmeyer's all about getting kids reps at positions that they play. So we didn't want to switch a ton of kids. So we switched one kid. Austin Payton went in there and done an absolutely remarkable job. So Shane Smith, Austin Payton on the on the offense and defense side of the ball, Casey Ruckman kicking the ball because Ronnie kicks it for us, and Isaac Hickman punting the ball. So we had 4 kids step up and do things that they normally don't do on Friday night.
And even when they hit you with the big play early, there wasn't any panic on the sidelines.
Not through the kids. Through me, there was.
Okay. I love your honesty, Coach. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, going tying into that, Derek Hutchinson, man, I mean that kid. You probably are glad you're done with that kid. 15 of 26, 220 yards, 3 touchdowns, and his favorite target, Noah Bell, 9 receptions, 188 for 3 touchdowns. I mean, 38 yards, 58 yards, and 5 yards. I mean, you probably felt like you were trying to cover Montana and Rice out there for a little bit.
I'll tell you
about
what,
their play.
Hutchinson, man, he is a player. He's probably top 2 player that we've seen this year. He's a junior. I sweated him all off season last year. I knew this kid, man. This kid can play, and I went up after the game and told him, you're the best player we've seen. I mean, he is a football player.
Nice.
And just to make sure he is a senior, right?
He's a junior.
Or junior, so he's got another year.
Yeah.
Wow.
He put on a clinic out here last year as a sophomore.
Yes,
Wow.
okay.
Yeah, he's a player.
So one more year to deal with him.
Didn't mean to put you in a bad mood. We're sorry.
I'm telling you, man, that kid, I just look at him and he is a football player, and I fear him, and he's a good player. And the receiver that you talked about, Noah, he's a good player. He was not their number 1 receiver coming into the game, so we focused on taking 5 away.
Right.
And we really, because he had 15 receptions for 280 some yards last week, and that 80 Martin was 5, and then 80 he was open, and I mean he's a player too. Nice. I knew I'm telling you, Malvern had put more athletes on the field than anybody that we've seen other than Indian Valley.
That's what you said the week before when I
I'm
talked to you.
telling you, man. They ask anybody. Malvern is good and athletic.
That's what, going back to that 38 to 21. That's why I felt so impressive. I mean, because it seemed like when you got started, it was going to be a track meet. But again, Hartmeyer with some adjustments and things. It's a big credit to you guys.
I texted Mr. Bates that day because Mr. Bates is the best athletic director in the world. I texted him that day because he always asks how things look or whatever, and I told him, I said, we can beat them, but we can't win a track meet against them because they had, they had that quick strike offense,
right.
And we knew we had to run the ball to run time, and we couldn't get in a throwing match with them because we wouldn't have won that football game.
As I say, Hickman only 6 attempts, but yet his legs were huge for you guys.
Yeah. Yep. So I mean, Isaac carried the ball 31 times. In the first half, it was more. It was more Franco, Shane, Jack, and then we put the ball. Isaac's just so. I tell you what, he made a play. We called a screen to McGilton, and they jumped it, and Isaac made a run that was, one of the best football moves I've ever seen in the fourth quarter. That kind of, had we not got that converted that right there. They could have went down and scored. It would have been a ball game, and we put together a long drive after that.
Nice.
Okay, so we're able to move ahead to this week. Yeah. Well, he compared the Malvern duo to Rice and Montana. Well, I think you're going to have to deal with another Rice and Montana.
It's Aikman and Urban.
Aikman and Urban. Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
okay.
man.
It's Alex Price and Braden Nussbaum. So Price last week had 352 yards, 3 touchdowns, 129 yards, and 3 touchdowns, 129 yards rushing, and 3 touchdowns versus East Canton. His favorite receiver, Nussbaum, 14 catches, 251 yards, 3 touchdowns last week. Price has thrown 14 touchdowns this year. 11 of them went to Nussbaum. So talk about how you're going to have to slow down this Aikman to Irvin.
I think he's already thrown for like 1,800 yards too.
Yeah.
Man, I tell you what, if you don't know Coach Cummings at TCC, you want to talk about a gambler right there. He will come out and sling the football. And I think I told anybody who wants to watch the Buckeyes game, you're going to miss some of it because they're going to come out and they're going to throw it 50 sometimes, and the clock's going to stop when they have incompletions, and they're going to hit some on us, and we're going to have to score. I mean, I'm telling you, they are – nobody's bad in this league. I mean, there's nobody bad.
And that's what I was going to say. You look at TCC coming in; they're 3-4. I think their record's a little bit deceiving. One of their wins, a familiar opponent you guys beat, Caldwell in week 1 in the fair game for them, 12-7. Looking back, TCC beat them 26-6. So at least you have a common opponent to look at some film. But I mean, they come into this game. They had been on a 3-game losing streak, snapped that against a good East Canton team last week. So are you expecting them to come in with what they did offensively on a little bit of a high against you guys?
Oh, absolutely. Coach Cummings, he's like I said, he's going to come in and he's going to throw everything at us. He's going to throw every dart he has, at us. And his kids are going to be ready. He's a good coach. And part of the thing that makes him a good coach is that he will onside kick it. He'll go for it on his own 20. He'll fake punt. He does everything, and we've got to be ready. He's tough to prepare for.
Mm-hmm. He's going to throw everything in the kitchen sink.
Oh, he does. He does.
So just talk about your offensive line. So once again, your offensive line came through last week, and we kind of go back again the last week, but I want to bring this up again. 56 carries, 307 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Talk about just the maturation of your offensive line and how important they are to everything you guys do offensively, because there's a lot of misdirection and fake one way and go the other.
Yeah, we run a ton of misdirection, a ton of counters. The thing is, a lot of the backfield stuff looks pretty complicated. The line stuff is pretty consistent. They only have a few blocking schemes. So while things look complicated, the offensive line, they get a ton of reps at doing a few things, and that has allowed them to mature so much. They have come together, because I'll tell you what, if you watched us in the John Glenn scrimmage, you would have thought Buckeye Trail was going to be lucky to win a couple games, because we weren't real good, and that group has come.
And I tell you, well, Coach, in your defense on that 7-on-7 scrimmage, John Glenn's doing okay,
right?
During the season.
That was a live scrimmage.
The live scrimmage.
Ranked 6th or 7th in their region.
They're not bad. Yeah, that was
You're right.
The live scrimmage. But Coach, you look around. You got another team that's going to spread out, throw the ball all over the field. We talked last week on this show about how much the game, especially high school football, has changed from back, when you were a standout, where teams like to run the ball. But it's still amazing. Of all, you go to games and you'll see one team or both teams, they'll throw the ball for 250, sometimes 300 yards, but it doesn't guarantee the W. Mm-hmm. You find a team that rushes for 250 yards or more, mm-hmm. It seems like 95% of the time they're leaving with a dub.
Yeah, you have to be able to run the ball. I know, I can hear it from the stands. Everybody's like, pass the ball. And it's like, you know what? You run the football, you don't pass the ball. You just don't. And that's what we do. If you can't run the football, you can't win consistently. If you can throw the football, you can lose consistently.
Yeah, and Coach, if you're able to run the ball and not only put points on the board but chew up time, it seems like it puts more pressure on the other team when their offense gets out there, that they say, hey, we better score quick or we may not touch the ball for another 6 minutes.
Mm-hmm. You're right, and that's our philosophy, is keep our defense off the field, run the clock, and that's what we do. It's what we're good at. Here's the thing. it's hard enough to win a football game. When you start trying to, dictate how to win that football game, it's tough. I mean, we have to win the football game by our game plan, and we put together the best game plan that we think for our kids, and that's running the football, and we're going to do it.
Well, I know you said, none of the kids or other coaches are allowed to talk about the playoffs. So I guess I'm going to be tough on you now. But, and maybe you don't want to talk about it to go against your own rule here. But, you guys sit number 11 in D6 Region 21. Somebody may say, well, maybe they're out of the hunt. But you look across what you guys have, TCC number 12 and D7 Region 25. Then next week, Sandy Valley, which is a huge game. D5 Region 17, they're 6-1. And then East Canton at number 13 in D6 Region 21. You have 3 teams that are sitting there with oodles of points. I mean, is it at least kind of somewhat crossing your mind? I know you're prepared for TCC. I know you'll prepare for Sandy. I know you'll prepare for East Canton. But is it at least in your mind that if you guys go 3-0 to finish the season, that, hey, you're going to do something special that a lot of people, as you said, I mean, we heard people saying, hey, they might go 3-7, 4-6. Does that make this season really special for you guys, thinking that, hey, if we go 3-0 and take care of business, we're going to be sitting in a great spot?
Yeah, I mean, I checked the Fantastic 50 website today where they update the percentages of getting in, and it looks like right now if we would win out, we'd be a coin flip, 50
right.
for us and Belpre and Nelsonville, York, and there's a couple other teams. But yeah, I guess the thing is, if we are a playoff team, we will win these next 3 games.
Yep.
And if we're not, we probably we'll drop one. So I told the kids after the Indian Valley game that you want to go to the playoffs, you're in playoff mode right now. You're in playoff mode, so you have to win every game. If you lose, you're not going to the playoffs. So yeah, if we're a playoff team, we'll win these last 3 games.
And which for me is, if you guys would happen to go 3-0, which I feel very confident you guys can do that. I mean, there's going to have to be some talk down at that Eastern District meeting in St. Clairsville come postseason that you might be up for Coach of the Year if that happens, considering what started. I mean, do you really feel like this is one of your better coaching jobs that you've done?
You know what? I have good assistant coaches, and I have good players. People have told me that I do not want any recognition. I really don't. I want it all for the kids, and I love being able to recognize my assistant coaches.
Right.
If any award, I guess, came, it would be a team award. I can tell you, I'm all about the team.
But I tell you, thanks for making me feel bad. As a coach, I've always kind of enjoyed the recognition if I, got any, which not much, but when I did get it. But no, Coach, I tell you what, there's a lot of excitement out there, and I know you're very humble and modest, but you've done a great job in your coaching staff with these kids, and you're fun to watch, and you're continually getting better. And this will be a big game. And I'm glad you mentioned it and brought it up. That's right, Buckeye Nation. The Buckeyes do play Friday night at 7:30. 8:30. There's a new invention called DVR.
Do not miss our game.
Just record it and come out to Buckeye Trail for homecoming. It's going to be a very entertaining game, and root the Warriors on, because they've definitely earned that, and a lot of excitement, and look forward to seeing you Friday night.
I'm ready for it, man. I'm ready to be back home.
All right. Well, Coach Donnie Kerns, we want to thank him for joining us here on the Buffalo Wild Wings KGP Pre-Game Show. And I'll tell you what, we'd also like to thank our sponsors, Surgent Construction, Valentine Insurance Agency, and Conn, for supporting the KGP Pre-Game Show. We'll take a timeout, and when we come back, we're going to talk Cambridge Bobcat football. As the Bobcats have it rolling, we'll step aside and be back after this timeout. Welcome back to the studios of Caleb Graham Productions for this week's Buffalo Wild Wings KGP Pre-Game Show. We just talked about the Buckeye Trail Warriors and got to visit with their head coach Donnie Kerns. And now we're back for this segment to talk about the Cambridge Bobcats, who got a big road win last week over Union Local to move their record to 4-3. And yes, very much in the playoff hunt. And Heath, you had a chance to talk to Coach Lowry. How did he feel about their performance against the Jets?
I mean, he felt really good, where they stood defensively again. He talked about how the defense has just been their bread and butter all season long. And once again, he was really pleased with the way they stepped up. I talked to him earlier today, and he was just praising their defense. And, if you look back after weeks 1 and 2, and the last 5 weeks, what they've done defensively, I mean, they have really come a long way. When you start looking at some of the people, Bartlett, and Whaley, the Mobilinis, they've just got a defense that's clicking on all cylinders right now.
And D-Train, Cambridge game at Morristown, it looked like an officials or referees clinic broke out because there were 26 penalties flags thrown in that game for 145 yards total. So things were a little sloppy at times.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's kind of what hurt Cambridge at the beginning of the year was a lot of those penalties. And the referees need to realize they get paid the same amount whether the game goes 3 hours instead of 2 hours. So keep those yellow flags in your pocket,
right.
Boys.
Yeah.
And Heath, Cambridge, we thought that they needed to put the game away by halftime. They did that with,
right.
And had a running clock to start the second half. But the first 12 minutes of that game, things got off to kind of a slow start.
Right. I mean, it's you look up, I mean, it's 14-0 Cambridge, and all of a sudden Union Local scores a touchdown, and it's 14-7 in the second quarter. And I mean, I'm sure at least some bit of panic probably come over Coach Lowry and his staff when it's that close, especially when they're on the road. But, they just blew the game open there in the second half. Or second quarter, excuse me. Had a big safety that was big there. So, they blew open the game. And then, as you said, in the second half, they kind of just, did what they do. But when you go back and look, it was kind of an odd offensive game for Cambridge because, we've been used to seeing the big numbers from senior quarterback Cody Moore, senior running back Trayvon Jeffrey. They didn't really have the big numbers this week, but they did what they had to do to win. And Coach Lowry even touched upon that. He said he was really happy to see the kind of diversity on offense this week. You look at Cody, only 6-9, very efficient though for 90 yards, a touchdown, including a 40-yarder to Sean Perkins. Had 4 carries for 33 yards, but 2 touchdowns. Trayvon, 11 for 95, a touchdown. Latrell Payton added 2 touchdowns. So they had a lot of different guys doing a lot of different things. And Coach Lowry, as I said, he talked to me earlier today and said, I was just pleased with the way we were to be so efficient on offense.
Yeah, and he talked about the second quarter. Cambridge really kicked it in, outscoring the Jets 23-7.
And that always helps when you can put up a big score number like that in the second quarter. It can definitely change momentum, help you guys kind of have that momentum going into halftime and then come out fired up to start the second half.
Yeah, and you don't talk about special teams enough, or we don't on this show, but the Cambridge Bobcat special teams, they really took advantage of the Union Local Jet punting team.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, they Union Local had to play a perfect ball game if they were going to win. And when Cambridge is utilizing things like their special teams to beat teams, game's a 3-game phase. We all know that. Offense, defense, special teams. When Cambridge is dominating defensively and then they start dominating at special teams, you go back to, week 5 against Belair. Special teams again for Cambridge hurt them that day. But when their offense is as efficient as it is, they're along with their defense, and they're using the special teams the way they did against Union Local, Cambridge is a very hard team to beat, as they proved the other night.
Yeah, and when you look at the second half, it was kind of like Meadowbrook did. It's nice if you can get a running clock in the second half, especially this late in the season. You talked about Moore not passing the ball as much, Jeffrey not getting as many carries. And once again, that's good to save some of the thread on your tires, so to speak, for this 3-game stretch.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing a game that obviously you should win against Union Local. So there's no use having one of your studs out there juke moving, all of a sudden he rolls an ankle, and now you're dealing with an injury the rest of the year or the next 2 weeks even. So just keeping everybody safe and healthy, I'm sure that's the number one goal for every coach every week. Obviously, you want to win, but health is the most important thing with these kids.
Yeah, and Heath, as a coach, it's a special feeling that the kids who don't get as much playing time, to give them a chance and give them a second half to get out there and play under the lights. That's special for a lot of the younger kids.
Well, let's go back to the first segment. Coach Kerns, he was talking about some of his kids getting to play. I mean, you can't put a value on that when you get your second and third stringers more action than normal, because we're getting into that point of the season where depth is definitely starting to become a factor in games. It's late in the season. The teams are starting to get banged up a lot. When you can get that happening, it really makes your team so much more deep. And then the other part of that is hey, it's a program. It's not just about 2019. Sometimes it's about 2020 and 21, as Union Local obviously is working towards. They have a lot of freshmen playing. I wouldn't want to play Union Local in 2 or 3 years. So I think for Cambridge, it's a double-sided coin there. You've got where they're getting the experience for this year, and it's making them deeper, but they also are looking with an eye towards next year as well.
Yeah, they started a new quarterback
Friday
night.
Right. Is that their fifth?
The fifth, I think.
Wow.
He's got I think one of the best football names, like Carter Blake.
No.
I don't know if he's in relation to former Bengal Jeff Blake or what, but he did all right for him. Was 13 of 18, 157 and 2 touchdowns.
He still don't have the name Hobie Scarberry, as I said last week.
We'll get to that next segment.
Yes. But I mean, that's my favorite name of the year. But anyways.
But Train, you talked about that, and let's give Union Local a little props there. A team that hasn't won a game now. Carter Blake, yes, it was his first career start as a freshman, but the week before against Meadowbrook, he came in on about the third series of that game and quarterbacked the rest of the game and really stood out. Yeah. Only a freshman, in their running back, Jackson Price. We talked about him. He's not a big guy, but only a freshman, but he runs bigger than he actually is.
They're going to be tough to beat, like Heath said. 2 or 3 years, just wait. You don't want Union Local on the schedule. And I would not be surprised if they don't somehow manage a win somewhere down the road this year. I think they have St. Clairsville this Friday. That's going to be a tough one for them. But they're going to beat somebody these last 3 weeks.
And Heath, it's amazing when you look at this Cambridge squad from week 1 through week 7. I don't know if we've had a team, not only this year, but you'll have to go back a few years to find a team that's improved from 0-2, and you're wondering, hey, can they get a couple of wins this year, to now, hey, can this team climb in to the 7th or 8th spot and be playing week 11? For Coach Lowry and his coaching staff, they've just done a remarkable job.
I mean, Train and I working together at the Jeffersonian. I was in the newspaper industry for 12 years covering football games. And, I tried to go back into my mental Rolodex about teams, that maybe come on strong or anything. And I could not think of any team that has done what Cambridge has done this year. And I don't want to toot my own horn per se, but you guys know I've been on Cambridge's bandwagon since day 1. I know that they got off to a rough start, but I mean, when like I said last week, I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but when you look at what was going on in the first few weeks, the penalties, the turnovers, short fields with their opponents, and then watching the John Glenn game, if you go back and watch that John Glenn game, 39-7, Cambridge did so many things that just shot themselves in the foot. You could see that once they got going and got some confidence that they were actually going to be a good football team. But again, for going from 0-2 to 4-3 and, a whisker away from beating Belair, honestly, it is very, like you say, it's a tip to your hat to their coaching staff. I mean, Coach Lowry, he said, I knew from day 1 I wasn't going to lose this team. He knew what kind of team he had. But when you can look at some of the things he has, when you have a defense, I'm going to go back to this week. When you have a defense that limits a team, negative 20 2 yards rushing on 29 attempts, and you've got a kicker. I'm going to give this kid praise. Andrew Philippes, when he goes 5 of 5 in PATs, when you've got special team and defense, Justin Bartlett this last week, 9 tackles, 6 solo, 1.5 for loss. When you've got things going like that, you're going to be a good team, and you're going to be able to improve as the season goes.
Yeah, and getting your second string kicker, Steeler Silvers, came in and made an
Our
extra
boy,
point.
Steeler.
But Heath, just a couple of things. First of all, on this show, we give a tip to the helmet. We tip the helmet.
Okay.
And D-Train, I've visited his mental Rolodex before. It's a place you don't want to go.
I don't think too many people do.
Try not to go there.
But D-Train, we talked to Coach Kerns the last segment about the importance of running the football, and it's amazing. Coach Lowry, after the game against the Jets, when he's talking about the improvements, he said from after the first couple of weeks, it was simple. He said when they started establishing the run and running the football, he said, when we can run the football, we are a tough team to beat. And again, it's getting the line of scrimmage battle, and the offensive line, which you watch and love to watch, they're really doing a special job.
Yeah, there was the struggle early with some false starts and some holding penalties those first 2 weeks. But now it seems like they're clicking on all 8 cylinders. And believe me, they're firing off the ball, and they're ready to go. They're ready to hit people, and they're ready to knock people back. And you got kids like that, I'm sure Coach Lowry and the staff's just loving it.
It's just, you can see it. They have confidence now where early on they were kind of doubting themselves a little bit, but now that they've got those few wins, and as you say, Tom, they're establishing that running game, you can just see their confidence.
Yeah, and now the Bobcats, after a road trip and a victory on the road, they come back home to McFarland Stadium Friday night to take on ECOL foe, the Coshocton Redskins. The Redskins, they're 1-6 on the season, but fellas, the Redskins have not had many problems putting points on the board.
And, I'm glad you said that, Tom, because that's one of the things I talked to Coach Lowry about. When you look at a Coshocton team coming in with only one win, which was week 2 against Claymont, a 36-28 win, that's very uncharacteristic of a Coshocton, football team. I can't think when they've been 1-6 or that bad. But, the thing is Coach Lowry didn't look at it that way. He said, listen, let me tell you something. They are a good football team, better than the record. He said, we are going to have to avoid the upset. So, they know, what they're capable of. And like you say, Tom, you look at the points. You mentioned it last week. 82-60 against New Lex. What a crazy, like I told Train off air, I said that they played that down in the Wheeling Civic Center. It felt like an AFL game. But, they have showed the ability to score, and they have some weapons that I'll get into in a second, but they can score some points.
And guys, I don't know, D-Train, if I've ever seen a high school team or hear score 60 points in a game. That's regulation, not overtime. Right. Regulation, you score 60 points and lose.
Yes, they must be doing something right on the offensive end. But to give up 60 and lose, that means you're not doing something right on the defensive end. And they've given up 182 points in their last 3 games. And, part of that is the competition. I think Ridgewood might have been mixed in there along with the New Lex. So they're playing good teams.
Philo.
But,
yes.
They've just got to find ways. I'm sure it's a big play. They're giving up big plays.
Yeah, they lost. They lost to Philo last week. Philo's just a notch above Cambridge. And Cambridge, you get a win, but not really any points against Union Local. Cambridge dropped from 9 to 11, but Heath, Coshocton, their problems are really on the defensive side of the ball. You talked about their win. They gave up 28 points to Claymont. That's the lowest amount of points they have given, and they're going to face a Bobcat offense that is clicking on all cylinders.
And that's what I was going to say. When you look at Coshocton, you start looking at their lopsided scores, and I'm sure Coach Lowry, he wouldn't admit it, but I'm sure they're licking their chops right now because, the way Cody has been able to run the ball and throw the ball, Trayvon, the way he has been able to, and then you got the receivers, Bartlett and Perkins. Cambridge right now is clicking, and with Coshocton giving up that kind of points, I wouldn't be surprised to see Cambridge put their biggest offensive output of the season this Friday.
Yeah, Coshocton giving up, I believe, just over 48 points a game.
Yeah, that's 7 touchdowns a game almost. definitely, I'm sure that's not what they had planned coming into this year, and I'm sure they want to correct this.
Right.
But on the other end, Cambridge is like, we're going to come at you just like these other teams, and we're going to look to score on you, and if we put up 60, we put up 60.
But and Heath, I want to ask you, because you've been around Coach Lowry a lot. How big or maybe concerned his coaching staff could be, because yes, the Cats they've made such a big jump. They're 4-3. You cannot step on the field Friday night and go through the motions, because if you lose that game Friday night, everything that you've worked up for as far as a chance for the playoffs goes down the drain. So how important you think the coaches have been in getting this team, making sure they're focused and they're ready to perform, put their best foot forward Friday night?
And like Coach Kerns is kind of like pulling teeth to get him to talk about the playoffs. But, they know what's at stake. Just the same thing Coach Kerns says, if Coach Lowry and them are going to make his Cats are going to make the playoffs, they have to go 3-0. They can't worry about going 2-0 or 3-0 until they're 1-0. So I think that's the mentality over there. But the biggest thing is, as I said, Coshocton has some weapons. You wouldn't think that, but they do. When you look at their quarterback, Gavin Williams is very dangerous throwing the ball. Running back Cameron Johns in the win going back against Claymont, 18 carries, 198 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So very capable. And then they have a receiver named Braden Johns who's very good. So, Coach Lowry said he is concerned about those 3 guys and Coshocton's ability to score. So he knows that his team is not going to be able to go in there and probably pull out a 14-0 win. He knows they're going to have to go in and score some points. But I think they're very confident. And as I said, right now it's not an arrogance, but they have a extreme confidence right now that they are going to show up on Fridays and do their job.
And Train, let me tell you, when you talk about the Coshocton Redskins, this has been one of the top football programs around. And just like everybody, you kind of go through, a tough year or two, and they're doing that this year. But there's a lot of pride in that program, and they can be dangerous.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of times where that record's been 6-1 instead of 1-6.
Right.
I can think of a couple off the top of my head. I remember Dory Song was their stud running back linebacker.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I think he went to Harvard.
Yeah.
And then the Shaw kid that was a linebacker running back that played at Indiana.
Yep.
Those are the 2 that pop off my head right now. Talking about 2 D1 guys. So they've had the talent, and I'm sure it's just kind of rebuilding that talent again.
And they've lost to a lot of teams that a lot of people have lost to as well.
Right. And something else going back, I was thinking about in my head as you were saying that, I remember a game Cambridge lost to Coshocton, and I don't know how I can remember this stuff, but 26-7 they lost in one year, and it was a game that Cambridge was supposed to win, and Coshocton went into McFarland Stadium and beat them somewhere in the probably early to mid 2000s there, 2003, 4-ish, but I remember that. So it's not saying that Coshocton ain't going to go in there and just roll over. Or couldn't pull off the upset. So, it's been done before. So, as Coach Lowry said, don't let that 1-6 record fool you.
Prediction time, fellas. Heath?
I've done pretty good with Cambridge predictions this year. I would say that I feel confident that they're going to pull it out. I would say that they're going to pull out a 41-13 victory.
I think if Cambridge keeps the formula that they've been doing all year, they should be able to pull out the victory. Be smart, balanced offense, strong, hard-nosed defense.
And well, that concludes our segment about the Cambridge Bobcats. And again, a friendly reminder to Buckeye Nation out there, yes, Ohio State does play Northwestern Friday night at 8:30. Please, just set the DVR, and Bobcat fans, come out to McFarland Stadium and root the Big Blue on in their big showdown against the Redskins, and see if they can get win number 5 on the season, moving in to the last 2 games of the regular season. Once again, we want to thank our sponsors, Surgent Construction, Valentine Insurance Agency, and Conn, for being part of this Buffalo Wild Wings KGP Pre-Game Show. And when we come back to the Caleb Graham Production Studios, we'll get to talk about the Meadowbrook Colts and their big game coming up Friday night. Welcome back to the studios of Caleb Graham Productions for this week's edition of the KGP Pre-Game Show, sponsored by Buffalo Wild Wings. We had a chance earlier to talk about the Buckeye Trail Warriors and visit with head coach Donnie Kerns. Last segment, we talked about the Cambridge Bobcats and their big game coming up at home against Coshocton. And now we're going to take a trek down, fellas, to Byesville and talk about the Meadowbrook Colts, a team that has a big game on the road this week against Riverview. But before we talk about the Black Bears, let's look back in what was a very entertaining game against a perennial playoff team. Well, possibly 2 years in a row anyway. That was Bloom Carroll. And D-Train, you had a chance to go to that game.
Yeah, the Otto Coons, I think, was as advertised. I would love, and we were talking about it off the air, Tommy, I would love to see if this kid plays baseball, because he could fire the football in, and you're just talking about a little 5-year-old stop or 5-yard stop route to a guy, and he was throwing darts at him. I mean, if he's throwing a football at a dart, imagine him throwing a 4-seam fastball down the middle of the plate to somebody. I'm sure he probably hit mid-80s, and he was very impressive.
And Heath, the one thing that really stood out after Meadowbrook got on the board first, a electrifying 62-yard touchdown pass, Davis Singleton to Jerome Todd to give Meadowbrook the 7-0 lead. Bloom Carroll takes the field, and just like a lot of teams, they go no huddle. But the amazing part was, as soon as they got to the line of scrimmage, they snapped the football. You go back to your days watching Oregon and Chip Kelly. I don't know if they snapped the ball as quick as Bloom Carroll did, especially in the first half. So Meadowbrook's defense was kind of put back on its heels early.
And that's a good point, Tommy, about their offense, because when you look at it, trying to prepare for that is one thing, but when you see it in the game is another, because you're not used to seeing that, as you said, in high school. But to Meadowbrook's credit, their Bloom Carroll is doing some awesome things. But you look up and it's 19-14 midway through the fourth, and Meadowbrook's got a legitimate chance to get out of there with a victory. But obviously they fell short. But I would credit Meadowbrook for staying within striking range and actually getting an opportunity to at least somewhat maybe get out of there with a victory. So a credit to Meadowbrook for hanging tight.
And Train, that was a long bus ride for Meadowbrook. And I talked about Bloom Carroll's first possession. It should be duly noted, Meadowbrook's defense, kind of put back on its heels with the speed, but they held Bloom Carroll, had it 4th and 10, and on that opening drive, Bloom Carroll goes to the line of scrimmage, and they're going to go for it 4th and 10. They draw Meadowbrook off sides to now make it 4th and 5. Go back to the line of scrimmage, fake it. They jump off sides again. So Bloom Carroll got Meadowbrook to jump off sides because of their fast pace, back-to-back plays. That led to a touchdown drive where if Meadowbrook maybe doesn't jump off sides, they may have the ball again with a 7-point lead.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking up at the scoreboard, and I know I've looked at it numerous times. I'm looking up there, I'm like, man, this game's only 8-7. It's in the first quarter. I mean, nobody in their right mind would have expected to be that low scoring of a game. I expected high scoring because I wasn't really, with what I saw with Bloom Carroll, I thought their defense wasn't as strong as they played Friday night, so I thought Meadowbrook could have some success against them. But Bloom Carroll and Meadowbrook, both defenses really came up and stepped up Friday night.
And Heath, Bloom Carroll, we talk about their defense. The job they did against Meadowbrook was impressive. And this is a team, Bloom Carroll, that was only giving up 14 points a game coming into this game. And they were really able to slow down Meadowbrook's vaunted rushing game.
Yeah, I mean, when they're, good point, Tom, limited teams to 14 points. Meadowbrook only scores 14, so they did their job. And the most impressive thing is we've mentioned senior running back Tim Ferguson all season, everybody in our area knows what an offensive weapon he is. I mean, the school's all-time leader just about in everything now, football-wise, offensively. But they limited him to 30 yards on 15 carries and even forced a fumble. I mean, if you would have told me that they would have done that, I would have taken a $1,000 bet on that. So, I mean, when you look at that, what they were able to limit, and then Meadowbrook, they outgained Meadowbrook 444 yards to 285. So, I mean, they really did an awesome job of one, keeping it out of Meadowbrook's hands and then limiting things. And, I mean, how could you not call this kid's name out? I wish I could see this kid kick. Cameron Shirky. 3 field goals and
The Shirky zone.
The Shirky zone, yeah. I mean, 3 field goals, 41 yards, which basically, put the game on ice, a 27-yarder and a 24-yarder. I can only remember one kid ever. I went and saw a Canton McKinley and Massillon, Washington game back in the day. The late Bill Vance, R.I.P. Bill, but he took me to a game up there, and they had a kicker that went to Pittsburgh that nailed 2 or 3 field goals. But I mean, to have a weapon like that in high school, I mean, that's pretty impressive.
He actually tried one from 50 plus and
really
missed it too.
Nice.
Actually,
Aaron Bates, Buckeye Trails. I'll do the tip of the helmet. Buckeye Trails, John Glenn's AD or kicker, Buckeye Trails AD. I saw him back in the day boot several 50-yard plus. Yep. So I mean, when you get to see a kicker in high school, I think it's kind of entertaining to see that.
Yeah,
and Meadowbrook jumps out. They have the 8-0 lead, and it's then 8-7 going into the second quarter, and it was the Shirky zone. he kicks 3 field goals. His miss was from 52 yards. He had made a 50-yarder a couple of weeks ago. His 52-yarder was right on line and was about a yard short. And you make 3 field goals. That's 9 points that most high school teams do not get from their special teams and train again. One reason their defense only gives up 14 points a game is because they make teams drive 75 yards of possession, because when they score, he put every kick in the end zone.
Everything
and so everything's a touchback. So when you have to take the ball at the 25 like Meadowbrook had to do throughout the game, that's asking a lot to go against that defense and go that far.
Good point, Tom. But, I mean, at the same time, you still got to credit Meadowbrook, because even though they might not have put up as many points, you still had some good performances. I mean, Davis Singleton, again, inserted in the lineup as a starting quarterback 3 weeks ago. He went 16 of 33, 223 yards, a touchdown, had a rushing touchdown. So, I mean, he's continued. And I talked to Coach Clendenning about that. I said, hey, listen, Davis had another good showing this past Friday. Can you tell me a little bit about how he's coming along, his maturation process, and the leadership he's showing? He said he is an athlete. When the ball is in his hands, he can find a way to make things happen. Throwing isn't his strength per se, but the receivers have all stepped up to help him out. I mean, and he was praising him in his leadership. So, hats off to Davis there for continuing to play. And I look at Meadowbrook. 2-5. Is that what they expected? No, none of us. You look at their schedule. I mean, Fort Fry, good team. Mogador, good team. St. Clairsville, good team. I mean, they had some tough teams on their schedule. But I still would say this. And Train, I think you would be able to echo it the most. I don't think Meadowbrook's given up on the season, and that's a testament to that coaching staff for what they're still doing.
No, they're still fighting and they're still trying. I mean, right now the goal is to get to 500. I mean, finish the year 500, because obviously the playoffs are probably out of hopes right now, but get to 500. That's going to be their goal.
And fellas, the thing is, Meadowbrook on the road at Bloom Carroll, it's a 5-point game with midway through the fourth quarter. Meadowbrook has just scored, and things were getting dicey. And again, Otto Coons, their outstanding quarterback, faces a 3rd down and 8. And drops back, and he throws a back shoulder throw down the sideline. And Meadowbrook, you could not have defended it any better than they did. But when you throw a back shoulder throw like that, and if it's on the money, those plays are about impossible to defend. And not many quarterbacks, I think he may be the only quarterback that Meadowbrook has faced this year that could have made that throw in that situation. It got him a first down, and it eventually led to the clinching touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, and Train talked about it earlier. I mean, the kid's just an athlete. 277 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was 24 of 42, added 68 on 60 carries, or 16 carries. I mean, the kid's an athlete. Then when you throw into the mix, Eli Kopus, 4 receptions, 109 yards, a touchdown. Hobie Scarberry, our boy, 7 carries, 61 yards, and a touchdown. Tom, you were talking about what a bowling ball he was coming in as their closer. It's tough when in high school. When you have a good quarterback, I mean, Meadowbrook can attest to that, having Davis down there those few years. When you got a quarterback that's an athlete like Mr. Kerns, I mean, it's tough to defend. And, I mean, you guys, I'm sure that you guys both enjoyed seeing him play.
Yeah, 20, like you said, 24 of 42. But again, really the underlying cause and maybe the key that led the Bulldogs to victory, 183 yards rushing. And again, it's the rushing yards that a lot of times determine the game. But Meadowbrook, they played the way they played Friday night. They played well enough to beat a lot of teams around. Just came up short. And hey, home field, if Bloom Carroll would have had to travel all the way to Meadowbrook, it could have been a different ball game. Those two teams were that evenly matched.
And I talked to Coach Clendenning a little bit about that, and I said, hey, is there anything maybe you could have done different? Or what was the biggest problem that you had the other night? And he said, we had continued miscommunication on the offensive line with Bloom Carroll walking people up and back off the line. So he said that was kind of a struggle for us, and maybe that led to some of the problems getting Timmy Ferguson going the other night. He also said we needed to keep their offense off the field because we knew that they could have an explosive play or that they had a kicker that they could capitalize on at any time. And obviously, I mean, Coach Clendenning was right. That's exactly what happened the other night.
Yeah, and you take those 9 points away on field goals, it's a 20-14 game. It's a one-score game, and you have a chance to win it.
Well, the other big one was that late in the third quarter, Meadowbrook has it 1st and goal at the 6.
Yeah.
They get down to the 1-yard line, and like Coach Clendenning was saying, the offensive line pick up a false start. Now it's 3rd and goal from the 6. They get down to the 1. Well, you're not going to kick field goal when you're that close, and Bloom Carroll stops them on 4th and goal. I mean, and then right after that, they drive and hit that 80-yard touchdown pass to Kopus on that wide receiver screen. That's a 14-point swing, 15-point swing. And
I got to talk to Boston Black Sunday at church about that, and kind of he was saying the same thing. He said, we got down to the goal line, we're about to score, we're feeling real good about where we're at, and he said it kind of was just sucked the life out of us momentum wise because of them getting moved back, and then like you say, Trey, that big 80-yard hit, it just kind of totally was a defeating momentum shift.
Yeah, and Meadowbrook, a tough loss against Bloom Carroll, and probably eliminated any chances for a playoff. But yet, if you win out, you can get to 500, and that would be a plus. But they go on the road down to Warsaw to take on a Riverview squad that in the past few years everybody just chalked up. You thought you would chalk up a W. It's not that way this year. Riverview is a very dangerous squad.
Yeah, I mean, and a massive credit to head coach Chad Massey there at Riverview for putting in one of the better seasons we've seen out of Riverview football program in a long time. And you look at the last 3 weeks. You talk about wanting to get better as the season has gone on. They have won 3 games coming into this week in a row, and they have outscored their opponents 111-28 in those 3 weeks. So let me tell you something, Meadowbrook folks. Riverview's coming into this game riding sky high, and let me tell you something. They're confident, and it's not going to be a game, as you said, that you can chalk up a W. I mean, they're going to have to earn a win on Friday.
And D-Train, when you look at the Black Bears, they have, when you look at their losses to Ridgewood, to East Knox, and to Zanesville, those 3 teams have a combined record of 20-1.
Wow.
So they've lost to 3 outstanding squads, but like Heath said, they've won 3 in a row. They just beat River pretty convincingly, and River, by the way, knocked off Barnesville a few weeks ago.
So Are we back in school when you're copying off my notes?
You're right.
Here?
Same here. I feel this.
Am I going to have to cover myself
yeah,
up? I have that
yeah.
20-1 stat right there too.
Jeez. I don't know how they grew up in Arkansas, but we don't do that here in Ohio.
Exactly. Their quarterback, Gannon Unger, ran for 168 yards and 4 touchdowns against River. River's head coach, Mike Flannery, said he was the best quarterback they faced all year. So that's pretty high praise because River doesn't play a bunch of slouches.
No.
And I would probably take Coach Flannery's word. He's been down at River for years and knows what he's talking about.
Right.
Yeah, that's a mental Rolodex that I would visit. But anyway, you're right. And Heath, what must Meadowbrook do if they're going to go down to Warsaw and get a impressive and much needed road victory?
I mean, I'm going to let Coach Clendenning speak through me because it's the exact same thing I feel. I asked him the exact thing you just asked me. What's it going to take? I said, hey, they're entering this week with a 3-game win streak. I talked about how they've outscored their opponents and how Unger is such a dangerous weapon for them. I said, what does your team have to do this Friday night to get the W and start that march to 500? And he said, Unger is definitely an athlete. He is another quarterback that we have to keep contained. I feel bad for Meadowbrook. They faced so many good quarterbacks this year. But he said we have to maintain the edge. He's had several big runs by gaining the edge. Again, he did that last week against River. So if Meadowbrook can contain the edge, that is going to be the key to the victory. If they can do that, I think they'll go to Warsaw and get the win.
And Meadowbrook may be down a man, too, on defense. Brady Ladd hurt his hand in the first half against Bloom Carroll.
I got some inside scoop, though. Brady said he's going to try to get it casted and ready to play Friday night. So he's one of the toughest kids around.
In my opinion, he's the heart of that defense.
He is, yes.
Yeah, Brady Ladd's really come on. Great insight there. You only get here on the KGP Pre-Game Show. And fellas, Meadowbrook's defense, they are playing better. As he's going to Brady McManaway led them with 9 tackles. So there's other guys stepping up. But Train, as we wrap this segment up for Meadowbrook, it's probably crucial that Timmy Ferguson gets established after a rough week last week.
I'm sure. I feel sorry for the Meadowbrook guys who had to tackle Timmy this week in practice because I guarantee he's pretty ticked off and he's running some kids over. Unintentional or intentional, we don't know. But I'm sure he's licking his chops and he's ready to go because him being held to, 30 yards rushing, I'm sure he's not happy about it and he's going to do something about it.
And, fellas, your thoughts, what's going to happen at Warsaw?
I literally went back again in my mental Rolodex that Tommy says nobody wants to go to, but I'll go there anyway. The thing is I remember a game there a few years back where Meadowbrook went to Warsaw and they were predicted to win convincingly and had to eke one out. I kind of feel, I get a same feeling this week. I think Meadowbrook's going to go up there and play well. But being that Riverview's so good this year, I don't think they're going to roll over. I think Meadowbrook's going to go up there, and it's going to be a hard-fought game, and Meadowbrook's going to eke one out there in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it's a tough place to play. It's grass. You don't have cell phone service, so I won't know if the Buckeyes are winning or losing until I get back to the car.
No, good point, Train.
I mean, they're going to have the grass there instead of the field turf, so I'm sure they might have that grass just a little bit higher to slow down the Colts offense.
No radio broadcast this week just because you cannot get service there at the stadium. So very happy for Riverview and the way they've got things going. They've been down a few years and happy to see them sticking with it and having success. But Meadowbrook, I expect them to come out and play one of their best games of the year.
And you're welcome, Cambridge, for the scouting report for next week.
Yes.
As Cambridge plays them next week.
Yes, absolutely. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then Coshocton and Meadowbrook hook up. So they ought to be pretty of a lot of conversation there between the local rivals. So that wraps up our Meadowbrook segment here on the Buffalo Wild Wings KGP Pre-Game Show. We're going to take our final time out, and when we come back, that's right, it'll be time for our BW3's panel picks. After this timeout, as we once again thank our fine sponsors, Surgent Construction, Valentine Insurance Agency, and Conn, as well as Buffalo Wild Wings, for making this show possible. We'll step aside and be back after this timeout. Welcome back to the studios of Caleb Graham Productions for this week's Buffalo Wild Wings KGP Pre-Game Show. We got a chance to hear from Coach Donnie Kerns of the Buckeye Trail Warriors, as well as talk about Cambridge and Meadowbrook. And now it's that time. You got it. It's the BW3 Panels Picks, where we'll look back at Week 7 and highlight some special awards. And our first one we would like to give out is the Surgent Construction Legacy Builder Offensive Player of the Week. And again, fellas, it was a tough choice. You had Davis Singleton in a tough loss at Bloom Carroll that threw for 233 yards and a touchdown, plus ran for one. And in Cambridge's victory, you had quarterback Cody Moore accumulate 3 touchdowns last week, 2 on the ground and 1 passing. But our Surgent Construction Legacy Builder Offensive Player of the Week is...
familiar name. We had to go to Buckeye Trail senior quarterback Isaac Hickman. He did it a little bit differently this week in the win at Malvern, 38-21, but he did it on the ground this week. 31 carries, 145 yards, and 3 touchdowns. As I said, usually it's his arm, but this week it was his legs that really led Buckeye Trail to the win. As Coach Kerns said earlier, Jack Perry was big in the first half. They rode Isaac Hickman in the second half. So a great honor for him this week in getting the win at Buckeye or at Malvern.
Yeah. So once again, congratulations to Isaac Hickman. This week's Surgent Construction Legacy Builders Offensive Player of the Week. And now let's go to the other side of the football D-train, where we hand out the Valentine Insurance Agency Defensive Player of the Week. Again, solid performances on the defensive side of the board. You look at Cambridge, Justin Bartlett. Mm-hmm. He had 9 tackles, 6 solo, 1.5 tackles for loss. In Meadowbrook's game, Brady McManaway had a big game as well. He had 9 tackles, 1 for loss. But our Valentine Insurance Agency Defensive Player of the Week is...
well, we tried not to make it 2 weeks in a row, but when you top what you did last week, we have to go with senior Jack Perry again. Last week he had 7 tackles, 6 solo. This week he had 13.5 tackles, 11 solo.
Man.
He didn't have the pick 6, but he did intercept the pass, and he had 1.5 tackles for loss. So, again, Jack Perry's just proven that he's one of the stalwarts for that Buckeye Trail defense.
So congratulations to Jack Perry. Once again, this week's Valentine Insurance Agency Defensive Player of the Week. And now it's time to wrap things up with our Play of the Week. And again, some big plays during Week 7. At Bloom Carroll, you had Meadowbrook, Davis Singleton hitting Jerome Todd for an electrifying 62-yard touchdown pass, which gave Meadowbrook the early 8-0 lead. And then at Malvern, it was Buckeye Trail in a tight game for Franco Rome. Ran it in for 16 yards for the touchdown that sealed the deal for the Warriors, giving them their 5th win on the year. But our Play of the Week for Week 7, Heath, is...
I mean, you're looking to Cambridge. Close game, 14-7 there at Union Local, but then there in the second quarter, Cody Moore, senior quarterback, hits junior wide receiver Sean Perkins, who was out earlier in the year, I believe the first 2 games, hitting for a big 40-yard touchdown to help Cambridge get rolling and roll to a big victory, 44-13 at UO. So great job, Cody and Sean.
Yeah, so congratulations to Cody Moore and Sean Perkins, are winners for the BW3 Panel Pick Play of the Week. So, fellas, it's hard to believe Week 8 is upon us. Another exciting week. Looking back at Week 7, and we look forward, again, getting together next week, good Lord willing, here at Caleb Graham Production Studios for the Buffalo Wild Wings KGP Pre-Game Show again next week. So as we head on out, once again, we want to thank Caleb Graham, working behind the scenes and also working feverishly in between breaks on makeup on my two sidekicks, as well.
He looks too good here, folks.
As well as our sponsors again, Surgent Construction, Valentine Insurance Agency, and Conn. Be sure if you see them throughout the week to thank them for sponsoring this show, as well as go get some wings at Buffalo Wild Wings. We want to thank them for being our main sponsor. So for Caleb Graham, Heath Dawson, and Darren McCullough, we want to thank Donnie Kerns as well for joining us. I'm merely Tom Strasser. We'll see you on the football field here in Week 8.
You can count on me meeting you on the sidelines.
And you stay classy, Guernsey County.